Hello guys, my name is SVB and I'm back with another video, and today we're going to be looking at some console play with our Ana player Jamie John, who's playing a competitive gold level match on Hollywood. Now, this game goes pretty easily for our player, so there's not too much going wrong here. There are a few things that I noticed that Jamie John wasn't doing quite as well as they could have done, so I'm just going to focus on three categories today. First of all, positioning. Secondly, we're going to talk about cooldown management and the use of Ana's abilities. And finally, we're going to talk about target prioritization, because that is really one of the most important things for Ana. So that's the plan of action. Let's get to it, guys. So coming out of spawn, Jamie John's team start taking a lot of damage, just a lot of poke damage from the Junkrat mines. And we're going to see the first of one of the trends that I noticed in the game. And that is that Jamie John seems to have an inordinate amount of love for his friendly D.Va. And we're going to see that he tunnels on his D.Va far too hard, and it comes at the expense of some of his other teammates. So I'm just going to let this clip play out, and I'll talk about what happens. So already we can see that Jamie John's Genji is about half health, while our Ana player is still focusing on healing the D.Va. Now of course, it's not easy to land a shot on this Genji, but I think what's the problem here is that Jamie John doesn't really seem to try much. So you can see he's still half health. Now he tries, but he misses and he decides not to continue. That's a nice sleep on the Reinhardt, and this could potentially have led to a kill. Unfortunately, the nade is thrown a little bit too close, and Jamie John should have probably arced it a little bit higher to try and get it onto the Rhine as well as his teammates, because if that anti-nade lands, this Rhine almost certainly dies. But as it is, the enemy Ana drops a nade, purpling both the friendly D.Va and Tracer, and also boosting her own Reinhardt. So he stays alive. But in the corner, you'll be able to see here that somebody on Jamie John's team is critical, and that's our friendly Hammond. So the poor guy, he's going to die off on the right, while Jamie John is still focusing on a D.Va who's being purpled at the moment. So healing this D.Va at this point gains nothing. So the Hammond dies on the right. Meanwhile, now our Brigitte is low on the right again, but Jamie John is still looking at the friendly D.Va. Now this time, the Brigitte manages to self-heal herself enough to survive. Jamie John notices, taps her a few times, and the D.Va gets some nice work done along with the Brigitte to kill the enemy Junkrat. Now the clip continues. Again, the friendly D.Va gets purpled, and Jamie John is still focused on her a little bit. This is a nice sleep, nice sleep, saving his Brigitte. But again, guys, it's really important that once the fight breaks out, you're not just reacting to what's happened, you're also anticipating what's going to happen. So if you know your D.Va's been purpled, then you essentially just need to ignore her for the next 4 or 5 seconds, because there's nothing you can do about her. So just remove her from your mind, focus on the rest of your team. And not to mention that the D.Va having a higher health pool does not need help as immediately as someone like a Brigitte or a Genji. And of course, Ana is good for healing tanks, but keeping people alive is the most important thing that you should be doing. So that sleep is nice, it helps the Brigitte stay alive a little bit longer. She gets corralled into this corner. Now once again we have the love for the friendly D.Va. So Jamie John here is spam healing his D.Va. Meanwhile, the Hammond goes low, he comes back for some heals. He gets a nade here. Now, this is the second trend that I notice, which is that Jamie John tends to use his nade as a friendly tool far too often, when the character could just have been healed up through some normal left clicks. Now in this scenario, if I take it back a second, in this scenario our Hammond has come back and is out of immediate danger. So left clicking him, well, let me say 6 or 7 times would be enough to heal him back to full health. Throwing the nade obviously saves you a few seconds, but it also means that you now have no nade to either burst heal a friendly character who desperately needs healing, or, and this is the most powerful use of the nade, it cannot be used to anti and deny someone from the enemy team healing at all. And that's something that I would encourage Jamie John to try and incorporate more into their game. Try and use the nade as an aggressive tool a lot more often, because at the moment I noticed Jamie was using it very frequently as just a means of healing someone up more quickly who didn't really need the burst healing in the first place. So let this clip continue to play out. Now again, see the Hammond here is already in friendly territory, and these clicks are just, the nade mostly went to waste there. But that's fine, it happens. The fight goes on. And Junkrat comes in. Again, Jamie John is forced to heal his D.Va, but again we can see there, the nade was used when just some left click shots would have been enough. Meanwhile, other people on the point, as we can see, are starting to go critical. And those are the kind of heroes where lobbing a nade in is much more useful, because when they're so far away, when they're jumping around, it can be difficult to quickly heal them with your left clicks. But a nade tossed in their general direction will not only heal them, but it's also a higher chance of landing on somebody in the enemy team who might be nearby. So we'll let the clip play out. The sound barrier is forced out from the enemy Lucio. Now we're going to see a nice play here. So the Genji gets nanoed. Boom. Eat that effing sleep. So this is really nice. I don't know if the Genji had blade or not, but it's likely that he did and he was about to pull it out. So this is a huge sleep that really could have potentially turned the fight for his team. So, but again, the problem after that amazing sleep is that Jamie John continues to tunnel on his friendly D.Va. This D.Va, as we can see, is almost full health. So chasing after her and healing her an inconsequential amount of healing is the wrong decision compared to the point where at the moment a Genji, our friendly Genji, has just pulled out his blade, and this nano boost that Jamie John has in his pocket could definitely have been used by the Genji to secure this point. As it is, Jamie John's team are able to cap the point anyways, but that's just a bit of target prioritization that could have gone horribly wrong for Jamie John. And we can see here there's people who were fighting on the point who would have been much better off with Ana healing than this, rather than this D.Va, who was pretty much fine anyways. Now Jamie John goes back, he anti-nades the Genji, and together with his Brigitte, he's able to mop him up eventually, and Jamie John's team cap the point. Now fast forward a little bit, the card starts to push on B, and now we're going to see another case of poor target prioritization here. So again, obviously, this time it's fine that Jamie John is healing his D.Va, since the D.Va is the only one around at the moment, the only one touching card, and the flanker DPS are far off in the back line, trying to get some kills somewhere along there. So this is fair enough. But we're going to see here, this nano boost gets thrown out rather randomly. At this point, the enemy Reinhardt is completely on his own, completely out of position from his team, and largely this nano boost goes to waste. Now that's a nice nade because it heals up multiple friendlies, so that's a good use of nade if you're going to heal up multiple friendlies at the same time, because that's something that left clicks alone wouldn't do. But this nano boost here goes almost entirely to waste. So again, if you don't have a good target, and if there's no good reason to use the nano, there's no reason to use it. And we saw earlier that Jamie John went out of sync with his Genji and his blade, which could have been used earlier on point A. And if that's the case, you're much better off just holding it and trying to get the Genji to come back around on a lap, or wait for a moment where there's actually a fight breaking out, and not just a bit of mild pressure that I think Jamie John panics and boosts his D.Va for. Now fast forward a little bit, Jamie John gets wiped once by the enemy Genji who's dragon blading, nothing you can do about that. Now as he comes back into the fight, we're going to see another case of target misprioritization. So the payload is being pushed, and out of this corner in a second you're going to see a Lucio come out, and Jamie John instinctively tries to sleep him here. Now, when it comes to sleep darts, guys, you really have to play the percentages. You really have to be a little bit like a mathematician and try to figure out what's the likelihood of a sleep landing at any given point. Landing a sleep on a wall riding Lucio who's jumping around is exceedingly difficult. So throwing it out 9 times out of 10 is essentially wasting it, unless you really get to the higher levels where you're really confident with your ability to land sleeps. If you're at the lower levels, make it easier for yourself. Try to save your sleeps for targets who are really close to you and therefore making it easier, or targets with big hitboxes, like the Reinhardt who just charged across the map and is currently over here. So that's just a minor thing there, a little bit of target prioritization. But this is a nice nade that lands from Jamie John, and this is what I'd encourage him to do more often, because anti-nading these two characters essentially condemns them to death. Lucio can no longer heal himself, nor his friendly Junkrat, and just one tap on either of them will see them die. That's pretty much what happens. The Lucio runs away, the Junkrat runs right into our friendly D.Va and dies a swift death. By the time the Lucio can actually come back from his healing, the point's been taken. And again, we're going to see another sleep attempt, which is very unlikely to land. Like I said, this Lucio is moving around so quickly in wall riding that you're very unlikely to actually kill him. Much better off trying to nade him, which Jamie John does and misses. Fair enough, happens. But there's just an example of how powerful the anti-nade can be when used defensively. Now fast forward a few seconds, Jamie John takes a little bit of poke damage from the Junkrat, and he forces out his own nade here. Now again, this is just a little bit wasteful. I do understand that when you get low, you do want to use your nade on yourself, and it's not that you never want to use it. But at this point, most of the enemy team is still being wiped, as you can see in the kill feed. The payload offers you some healing here, your Brigitte is around, so there's really no pressure for you to necessarily use the nade on yourself. And having your abilities in your pocket as Ana can be really big, because you never know what might come around the corner. And we'll see here, just as a continuation of that, Jamie John just pops his nano on the Genji, forcing him to blade, Now there's very few Genjis in solo queue to not pop their Dragon Blade as soon as you nano them. And again, as I just pointed out, most of the enemy team is dead. So there's really no reason here for Jamie John to pop their nano. It does force a sound barrier on their side, but that's more out of the Lucio being an idiot. If the Lucio was smart, he would realize that most of his team is dead, and even if this nano blade wipes him, that's a big win for his team, because when they come back from spawn, they can have a sound barrier to engage, and Jamie John's team will have no offensive abilities. Instead, the Lucio messes up as a consequence of Jamie John messing up. So the Lucio's error doesn't really vindicate Jamie John's decision to pop the nano on his friendly Genji, who really gets almost nothing done with his Dragon Blade, as we'll see here. And in the end, Jamie John himself is forced to mop up the kill on the Ashe. So again, just a bit of decision making, ability usage, another sleep missed on the Lucio, as we said. So just these little things to keep in the back of your mind can make you that much more of an efficient Ana player. Having your sleep and your nade in hand more often and using them against targets where they're more likely to land means you increase your impact as an Ana. And similarly, using your nano boost at the right times, assessing what's going on and whether it's actually needed in a fight or not, can increase the impact each of your nano boosts gets in any given fight. Now fast forward, this is mostly a steamroll from Jamie John's team. The only thing I want to point out is a little bit of positioning, and we're going to see here. Now this is a nice kind of area for Jamie John to be. And this is the kind of distance he should ideally aim to be at as Ana on this final point. You can see he gets tempted to just come in, push in with his team. And when the enemy Reinhardt comes in, he's able to land a shatter on Jamie John. He gets a nice sleep off in return. And at this point it really doesn't matter because Jamie John's team is steamrolling so easily. But in another game it might matter. In another scenario it might matter. And the only reason Jamie John gets shattered there is because he's in range of the enemy Reinhardt. Now if I show you the top-down map view of Hollywood, when the card is here or in this general area, you basically have a few decisions to make as Ana. Ideally you're kind of lurking around these corners here somewhere, or depending on what the enemy comp is, how pressure you feel, you can even be as far back as here somewhere. And if the enemy team isn't very good at dealing with you, then you can try and be on the side somewhere. But essentially you definitely shouldn't be anywhere in the middle here, because this open area is 100% going to be in the range of the enemy team. And it means you're liable to be hit by anything, either deliberately or accidentally. So shatters, grabs, dragon blades, these are all things that can reach you when you're here, but not when you're in any of these other locations. And essentially the principle with Ana to remember, guys, when you're thinking about your positioning, just try and figure out how far you could legitimately possibly be away from the enemy team while being close enough to your team to still be effective. So essentially, you need to figure out what the distance is where you're far enough away from the enemy team to not be hit by anything they might be doing, but within range of your own team to be able to land nades and sleeps consistently, and of course your own healing. So that's something that takes time in practice, and I obviously can't point out every position on every map for you guys to learn, which is why I want to try and teach you the principle, because if you can understand the principle, you'll be able to apply it to any point in any fight in any situation. And this is something as Ana particularly you should always look back. If you die, it's usually because you were too close to the action. And as Ana, you can really survive more often than anyone else in your team, because you can be at this distance where you're essentially untouchable until the rest of your team goes down. So that's just something to bear in mind. And Jamie John's team is able to cap this point quite easily. Now fast forward to the defense round. We're going to see Jamie John face the dilemma that most of us face in our latter games, and that is that our team is in a really dumb position, and no matter how much Jamie John tries to inform them, they don't seem to want to listen. So you'll see here that Jamie John is spamming the group up with me button because he wants his team to come further back. You can see he's trying to beg them, please come here, hold here, hold here. I'm guessing he doesn't have voice, so we can't actually say this, but you can tell that Jamie John's begging for his team to come back. But as you can see, the Genji, the Reinhardt have no interest in coming back. Now at this point, you're left with two decisions. Stay where you are, or go with your team. In this scenario, I would advise Jamie John to actually go a little bit forward and hold where his team is. And we're going to see why in a second. So as the fight plays out, or as the spawn doors open, Jamie John is on point. We can already see his Genji's gone down critical from the poke damage he has stupidly taken from the spawn doors. Now while Jamie John is correct, and the position he's holding is a much better one than where the Genji is, it serves him no good to be here while the rest of his team is dying. So we can see that the Genji's already died, and had Jamie John been around this corner and had sightlines of his Genji, perhaps he's able to tap him a few times and keep his dumb Genji alive long enough for him to escape. And we can see here again now that Brigitte pushes forward. And again, despite Jamie John wanting to stay back, the Brigitte gets Junkrat naded into this little corridor, and now she's going to be the next to go. So this is where I sympathize with Jamie John. Clearly, he understands where he should be holding. Where he was telling his team to hold is a much better position to hold in Hollywood. But if your team are playing like idiots, it's still your job as a healer to try and keep them alive. Because starting a fight 4v6 is going to lose you the point anyways. So even if you die with your team a little bit farther ahead, it's a lot better than staying alive, only to die a few seconds later after your team has stupidly thrown themselves into the pit. So we'll see that the fight continues to break out. It's very messy at this point. Jamie John lands a nice sleep on the enemy Junkrat, but he gets a bit greedy to confirm the kill. Runs a bit forward. Again, going back to the idea of positioning. After landing that sleep, Jamie John could easily have been further back when trying to kill him. And being so close, he ends up eating a few nades and dying. And if we look at it from the top down, Jamie John ends up being somewhere around here. And as you can see, there's no cover around here. So this is a much nicer location. This is a much nicer location. This is a much nicer location because we have natural cover. And so after landing the sleep dart here, Jamie John could easily have retreated back to behind the payload, thus avoiding those nades and avoiding that death. Now fast forward, Jamie John respawns and tries to run back to the point to help his team. He lands a nice nade on the Junkrat, and I super sympathize with him. I've been in this scenario many times when you just want to land one hit on this damn Junkrat and nothing you seem to do can land a hit on him. By the time he comes back, he's fully healed up and the duel recommences. Eventually the Junkrat goes down. And now, Jamie John has an excellent chance to actually stabilize with his team, because in the meantime, his Genji has returned, his D.Va has returned, his Hammond is right in front of his face, occupying the entire screen. So most of Jamie John's team have managed to come back. So at this point, Jamie John has an excellent chance to stabilize, but instead, he opts to run on the point. And you'll see in a second when I let the clip play on, that he ends up dying very quickly. Now I understand that the enemy team is on the point, and so Jamie John feels the pressure that somebody should be on contesting, but we can see that there are already people contesting the point. And as a healer, it's really not your job to be contesting. You should be the last person as a healer to actually come and contest the point. Only if everyone else is dead on your team should you come out and step out into the line of fire, because if you stay back at a safe distance and heal your team and keep them up, they can contest the point much longer than if you join the fray right in the middle with them, end up dying, and now they have no means of healing. Now they're going to die to any amount of poke damage that you take. So you can see here, Jamie John ends up getting one side of the Symmetra barrier, gets taken out by the Lucio. Had he stayed in the cafe here and potentially even gone to the high ground, he'd have been able to sneakily land heals on all of his team, keeping them up while keeping out of harm's way from the enemy team. Now again, this is just another example of the positioning principle. In this case, the sight lines aren't very long, so you can't be too far back from your team. But even being up here or inside here behind cover is legitimately as far back as you could be from the action from the enemy team, while still being within range of your own team to heal, grenade, and generally enable them. Now, fast forward to the final fight of the game. We're going to see Jamie John step out. Once again, he has a Nano ready for his Genji, so this is good. Once Jamie John starts consistently using his Nano with his Genji blade, that's a much more optimal use of the ability, and a Nano blade really can get just tremendous value. It's enough to confirm your most fights, provided your Genji is halfway decent. So the Genji pops the blade, Jamie John ends up nanoing, but we can see here again a little bit of positioning. Jamie John ends up just drifting closer and closer to the fight. If we take it back a couple frames, he can just remain here behind these boxes as he nanos his Genji and just stays behind cover, allowing him to heal the rest of his team while not putting himself in harm's way. But instead he just keeps coming forward because he wants to be part of the fight. And you can see here now he's forced to retreat because he's eaten so much damage and he's forced to use the nade on himself again. So just a little bit of positioning can end up forcing you to use an ability, which then later costs you because you don't have that ability to actually use in a swing factor when the fight actually begins. So these are just little minor things. You might say, why am I fixating? But these little decisions snowball into greater decisions, and you end up getting forced into a corner because of one bad decision you make. So if you fix your positioning, you're no longer forced to use your nade to heal yourself. Then you have your nade to burst heal one of your allies or anti-nade some enemies. And now, rather than having to waste one ability because of your own bad decision, you can now use your ability to make a massive swing in the fight and essentially carry the fight in a subtle but powerful way. So, to summarize guys, starting off with positioning, remember to try and be as far away as you physically possible while being close enough to your own teammates to be still able to heal them, to throw nades at them, and to sleep anybody who's on top of them. Of course, as with any hero, try to use natural cover where possible, and be mindful of your surroundings because any unnecessary damage you take can end up forcing you into using a nade, which you really don't want to do. And make sure you're the last person to contest objectives, whether that's payloads or points. Ability usage, try to use the grenade aggressively because the purple anti-nade ability is a lot more powerful than the burst heal. Remember to not use the nade lazily, i.e. if you have the time to heal someone and if they're not in any immediate danger, and you can just left click them up to full health, there's no need to chuck the nade in because it has much better uses than that. And similarly, no need to throw sleeps on cooldown, particularly if there are targets you can't really hit. Holding it just in case something comes your way can end up saving either your life or a teammate's life in any unexpected situations. Finally, target prioritization. Make sure you're watching who's critical and who's not. I actually had to check the tab screen at one point to check that Jamie John wasn't in a duo with the D.Va player because I was so surprised by how much time he was spending healing this D.Va up. So while it's good to heal tanks, make sure you're not neglecting other teammates who are in more dire need of your heals. And as I said before, make sure you're trying to sleep high percentage targets, not just the first person you see, because landing 8 sleeps out of 10 on Reinhardts and Winstons is a lot better than landing 1 sleep out of 10 on a Lucio. And finally, save your nano for the right time and for the right person, because a properly timed nano boost can make one of your friendly characters a lethal killing machine. So that's all I got for today, guys. I'd just like to thank Jamie John for submitting their VOD, and I hope this video was able to give them a few pointers in the right direction. I really thought that you played actually quite well, and that in general, you seemed to have the fundamentals pretty down. Your game sense seemed good, and I could tell from that example on your defense on point A that you knew your Overwatch theory and you knew where your team should be holding. So it's unfortunate that your team weren't on the same page. Your aim was really good, which is one thing I know Ana players are really self-conscious about or worried about. So your aim definitely wasn't a problem, and you didn't die a lot, which is always a really good start, particularly at the lower elos. If you're not dying a lot, that's usually a really good sign, and usually it's easy to build from that kind of foundation. So if I think you just try to incorporate the 3 things that I focused on in this video, positioning, ability usage, and target prioritization, I think if you try to incorporate them one by one, don't throw it all in at once because that might get confusing, but if you just try and slowly get each of those things in one by one, I think you'll really see an improvement in your play, and I think you'll really start to climb. Once again, I'd just like to thank all my patrons who are really awesome and help me keep making these videos. And I'd like to remind everybody that I do have a Discord server now where I'm hosting pugs every weekend, and we had some really fun pugs last weekend, and I had some really nice discussions with the players after the games, and I think everybody seems to be learning a lot, and I'm learning a lot from them. So come on down and join the pugs. If you don't want to join, I do stream them on Twitch, and you'll find that link in the description of the video. So that's all from me. I hope you guys found this video helpful, and I'll be back before you know it with some Overwatch content. See you guys soon.